Together we learn, together we grow, together we heal, together we flow. Be cool, every teacher, every school. 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 Be cool, be cool.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Cool Beans, the podcast where we provide tips, strategies, and inspiration for induction teachers. I'm Marcella Wine-Snyder, one of your co-hosts, and I am joined this evening by the remarkable education phenom, Angelica McDonald, and masterful education and wellness guru, Todd Show. How are you two doing this evening?
Doing
Doing
well, doing well.
Great. Well, today we are diving into a hot topic, social media, and how to navigate it responsibly as an educator. So, whether you're a TikTok superstar or just love scrolling Instagram, we've got tips to help you stay, like I like to say, P cubed, professional, positive, and protected. So, okay, Angelica and Todd, quick thought. Here's a question. As an educator, what's the first emoji that comes to mind when you think of social media and why?
For me personally, if I'm just thinking about for personal use, I'm
Mhm.
thinking of the heart emoji because I love social media. I love being on TikTok. I love, being on Instagram. And I guess because I'm also Gen Z, I found out. So my kids can and I understand that. But when it becomes like an educator, so using it maybe as a teacher, I will use
Mhm.
like the question mark emoji because there's a lot of questions and loopholes regarding that. But for me personally, I love social media. I'm on it all the time. And I probably need to learning from Todd to stay away from it a little bit. But as an educator, then I'll use the other emoji, like the little question mark, like this, kind of thinking about
Mm.
it. So I'm like half and half.
Okay. What about you, Todd?
I'll say the thumbs up. And my daughter says that that's kind of rude, and because I'm Gen X, and she's whatever this. I don't know if she's Alpha or whatever this one is. But she is. She says like, "Do you just do thumbs up to everybody?" I'm like, "Yeah, if I agree with something." She's like, "That's just rude. You don't even like type in a message back." I'm like, "Well, not if I don't need to." But thumbs up is a good way of just saying, "Yeah, I agree." So I use
Yeah.
thumbs up a lot.
I think for me as an educator, especially when it comes to social media, mine is, I think it's like the thinking face emoji, especially
Hmm.
when I'm about to post something. It's like, let me think about this first before I post it. So it's almost like that one raised and furrowed eyebrow, with the palm at the face. I think that's the one for me. That's the one
Hmm.
that comes to mind when I think of social media.
Yeah.
So let's transition to why social media matters. So, undoubtedly, we can all agree, I think, that social media is a big part of many of our lives. Just like you just said, Angelica, it can be a great tool for learning, it can be a great tool for connecting and for sharing ideas. So, as teachers, we even use it to collaborate with other educators, we use it to find lessons or inspirations for lessons, we use it to build our professional learning network. We could go on and on. But we do know that being an educator means holding ourselves to a high standard, both in and out of the classroom. What we have to understand, I think, is and realize is that our posts, our comments, and our interactions typically reflect on us professionally, even outside of work hours. So whether or not we're at work or not, they see us as an educator and we're held to a high standard. So today, we're here to share a few golden rules of social media use. So let's start first with the most important rule, I think, is be mindful of what you post. What are your
Hmm.
thoughts?
I definitely agree with that. And I think it's even outside of education, like especially in our climate now, everyone has to be very mindful of what you post because with social media, it's not just your close friends, everyone sees it. Even if you have it private, people can screenshot it and share it everywhere. But you really like the same thing when we talk about with speaking, think before you speak, think before your post. And one thing I learned in my graduate program or undergrad, they said if you wouldn't want your grandma to see it, would you really want to post that? And that was always even though I was always good with social media, even when I was young, my parents actually would not let me have my own social media account until I was like a junior. And the only
Okay.
reason they let me have a social media because I wanted to start a blog for young girls and to kind of encourage them. So they let me have a Facebook only so I could post my posts. And so that was like the only reason they really looked after it. So that really, I already had that mindset when I was young. I always had to be mindful of what I posted. But now a lot of younger teachers, because they started very young with posting, and they may have posted when they were younger, but now they're an educator. People can see back to what they've posted. So you have to
Mhm.
be careful, no matter how young you are. If you're thinking about being a teacher, so if you're in high school now, you're thinking about being an educator. Think about years later, what would people think about that? Even if it's something not that crazy, but you still have to be careful of what you post because people can take what you say and completely twist it. So
Yeah.
just kind of think about it.
I agree, Angelica, that you have to be really careful because sometimes even what you say can be taken out of context. You really need to
Mhm.
think through about how people can interpret what you're saying. But I also want to take it in another direction too, and make sure that educators understand that they do have First Amendment rights, that you do have a right to political opinions, you do have a right to your religious views, and that kind of thing. And if that's what you want to use uh, your social media for, you can do it. I would caution though when you start to ridicule like district policy or people in your district, that's where you can get
Mhm.
into a lot of trouble. But if you get on and say, "Hey, I think you should vote for Kamala Harris," or "I think you should vote for the other person who shall not be named," you
Mhm.
can do that. That's your right to have
Mhm.
those views. They don't end because you're a teacher. It's just you can't do that during the middle of the school day on a school device, but on your own device on your own social media platforms that are disconnected from school. Please be sure that you actually do use your voice to advocate
Mhm.
for the things that you believe in.
Yeah, absolutely. Usually, when I talk to induction teachers and when I'm in districts providing PD, I always tell them to think of the TEACH acronym, TEACH. Is your content thoughtful? Is it educational? Is it appropriate? Is it clear? And is it helpful? And I think that is something that they can agree to before they post, because we have to remember that when we share on social media, it doesn't stay private, even if we have our tight security settings. Because I always tell them as well, screenshots are forever. That is the first thing folks will do is take a screenshot of what you posted, and even though they could take it out of context, they're sharing that information wisely. So that is why we want to make sure that we give great tips to our induction teachers. So, speaking of those settings, remember I talked about making sure your settings are tight. Um, One tip would be to make sure your accounts are private. This helps to maintain those boundaries between your personal life and your professional role. Make sure that you check your privacy settings regularly, because I didn't realize that sometimes certain platforms, they'll update those settings without giving you any notice, and you think that you're secure but you're not.
Actually didn't know
Okay.
that.
Yes. So what are your thoughts on like avoiding connecting with students on your personal accounts? Do you have like an account where for school versus an account that you share with your family and friends? Is there a need to have two separate accounts?
I guess it really depends on you as a person, but I kind
Mhm.
of talked about earlier how I was kind of used to having like almost like a my social media was never really a personal page. It was always almost like a public page because of my blog. So I kind of
Okay.
always kept that mindset. Of course, I still post personal things, but not that personal. So like so when I first started teaching, I changed my Facebook name instead of my last name to my middle name so my students wouldn't find me. Mainly because I knew when I first started teaching, I was going to be very close to the age of my students, and surprised, and I'm glad I did it um because of my area that I'm in, a lot of students kind of like know my family, and so some
Mhm.
students were trying to befriend me, and then I completely deleted it. Even though I was like very young, I already had that mindset. I wasn't going to befriend any students on social media. Mainly for me, because I wanted to keep that boundary. Because I've always said, I know some elementary teachers say call their students friends, but I always started off at the very beginning whenever I started teaching, even student teaching. I'm not your friend, but I can be your auntie. I can be a mother figure, older sister, but I am never going to be your friend until you graduate. And ironically, a few weeks ago, we actually had a debate question. I gave this question to my students, and I asked them, do you think it's appropriate for high school teachers to interact with their students on social media? And it was very interesting seeing their reaction. It was almost half and half. Some of them said they would actually like to interact with their teachers because they actually have good professional relationships. They actually want to know what teachers do outside of school. Some of them said, like, if they need help, maybe they can talk to their teachers after school. And then the other half of the kids they're like, I understand that. And they were very respectful with their debate. They said, I understand that, but not all teachers are professionals. And some of them may try to take over their boundaries. And then some kids said vice versa. Maybe some students, maybe there could be some, miscommunication, things could happen. And then one kid was like, no, teachers are teachers, and I'm the kid. We can talk after school or via email. So a lot of kids actually were like in between, back and forth, whether they wanted to be friends on social media. And then some of them were like, I don't want my teachers to see what I do after school. But for me personally, I told them I would not befriend you on social media at all. Like, I would literally delete you until you graduate. So if you drop out, I would not still be your friend on social media. You have to graduate, and I'll befriend you afterwards. So that's my personal opinion on that.
I think those are really good. That's a lot of good thinking there. I'm old, so I was around when social media was just starting, and we had MySpace, and then it kind of evolved into Facebook, and it was later on that Twitter came, and then later on after that, Instagram and all that. I was out of the classroom by the time Instagram and TikTok really became things. My policy was I'm particularly concerned about, like, as a male teacher at a high school, the optics of me being connected with somebody outside of school in an informal setting is something that even if your intention is positive, the optics of that can sometimes look weird. My policy was like yours, that I just simply did not accept friend requests from students until they graduated. And then once they graduated, I did. And of course, at that point, it felt like, okay, they're adults and we can connect. And I wanted to stay, and I have stayed connected to a lot of my students. But to me, when they're in your class, it's really important to have those boundaries and those distinctions. And I was like you said, I was friendly to them, and I tried to build good rapport and a great relationship. But I think it is really important for you to make those distinctions, because sometimes teachers don't, and that gets them in trouble.
Yeah, that's the key thing.
Yes. Yeah, well, I think I'm older than both of you, so social media wasn't around during my time. However, I think I probably would have, just made that clear delineation with my students, because I taught high school. So when I first started teaching, I was just a year to a year and a half older than some of the students I taught. And so that really would have been inappropriate. So yeah. And you also have to check what your district policies are about social media. So all the induction teachers, please make sure that you check your specific policies in your districts and familiarize yourself with them before engaging on social media with your students. So one of the things that both of you mentioned were those boundaries. So while we're on boundaries, I would caution induction teachers to sort of resist the urge to vent about work on social media, no matter how secure you think your account is, or if you post something when you're frustrated or about a challenging day that you've had, or a specific situation. Guess what? Any of those could land you in hot water. So be careful about what you post. I would say focus on sort of building that positive online presence as you talk about the profession, as you talk about your job. Maybe share your successes, share your creative ideas, or share uplifting content. I know I like to. There are two comedians, former teachers that I like to sort of hone in on, or like Eddie B. Comedy or Jerry Brooks. I like to, you know, see what their content is about, if I need a laugh. But for those teachers who need to vet, I would suggest that they find a trusted mentor or a colleague offline. But even better advice, connect with the folks via Cool Coaching. So, just a reminder, every Tuesday and Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m., Stephanie Johnson, Angie Brush, and I, we are available for Cool Coaching. And we'd love to talk to anyone who needs our assistance. So remember, every Tuesday and Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m., we are available. And then finally, I would also caution everyone to sort of steer clear of any controversial topics, especially those that are unrelated to education. So I think that's, while it's great to have our opinions, I would caution everybody to sort of avoid debates or content that could be misinterpreted or even cause division, because that's the last thing we need, is for people to look upon our profession negatively, and we don't want to aid in
And I
that.
did
So,
want to add something my principal talked about. So it was last year during one of our meetings, and he was talking about social media
mhm,
because he said, I know a lot of new teachers are here. We're going to talk about social media very quickly. But
yes.
another thing he added, I never thought about, also be careful what you like, because people can see what you're liking. So like, if even if you're not debating, but
Mm,
you know how when a person posts and you see all the, I always love looking at the comments of a post because those are the funniest things to watch. But if you like those things, people can also see what you like and will screenshot it and send it to the district. And he was telling us people have been doing that. So, like, if a teacher liked a controversial post, even if they didn't comment, they didn't share it, but you liked it or put like a little emoji, people will screen, parents, students, especially if they don't like you, will screenshot it and send it to HR to try to get you in hot water. So, of course, you should be free to have your opinions, but also look out with people who are trying to, put, I guess, dirt on your name. So also be careful with that.
Yeah,
yeah.
I agree with that. I would say there's a positive way to have a conversation about about issues. So, for example, like if, instead of getting really granular and aiming your critique or your negativity towards a specific person or towards
Mhm.
a district, I think it's more useful actually to talk about sort of the philosophies that you support. Like, what is it that you
Mm,
envision that you want to see? So for me, an example of something I talk about a lot on social media is, can we reduce the amount of testing? Can we kind of look at standardized
mm,
testing,
mhm,
and maybe some of the ways that standardized testing is warped the fabric of public education in ways that aren't helpful to teachers or students. Doing that, like, if instead of saying Principal Johnson has us testing too much and is,
Mhm.
he's a jerk or whatever,
mhm,
there's a big difference between those two. So I think it's like really important, if like, for teachers to speak up to speak their minds, but just to think about, how can I talk about this in a way that's actually going to move the needle and not just seem like I'm complaining. Because
Mm.
that's I think there's a huge difference between like complaining and nagging versus making a really sound uh, argument, or like advocating positively for the things that you want to see.
yeah, I agree, Todd, because that's ed policy there. So you're either going to be on one side or the other of ed policy. Yeah. Okay, so let's flip the coin then and talk about the positive ways teachers can use social media. I think one way is to follow inspiring accounts for any ideas. For example, an account that may share creative lesson plans, or an account that talks about classroom hacks, an account that lists resources that teachers can use. Sometimes the hashtags like EdTech or Teacher Life or EDU Chat are some of the ones that I like to follow. What about the two of you?
And that's where I get a lot of my ideas because people think I'm the most creative person. Like, I just follow a lot of different, social media accounts. Also be careful like with
Mhm.
certain ones because sometimes they just post things and you have to make sure it's tried and true. But overall, like do try those different things. I love looking at new ideas and trying it in my classroom. It's really inspiring, especially when you feel like you're almost burnt out, but then you see something cool that another teacher is doing and you try it and your kids love it and it makes me happy. But I
Yes.
especially love following like what you said, Marcella, the comedy, the teacher comedy ones. I love those. Those really are
Yes.
uplifting. But I think another positive thing is also posting like your successes in the classroom because sometimes we focus
Yes.
a lot on the negative. So what my uncle has taught me to do my grows and glows. So, like posting like some good things
Mhm.
that are happening in the classroom. But I will like to get on my soapbox for a little moment regarding social media and teachers posting on social media. Please don't post your
Mhm.
kids on social media. Please, please don't do that, like their faces and things. Because I know a lot of TikTok teachers are doing that, and a lot of them think because their district signed a form that they can post your kids. They think it's the same thing with them, but most of the time it's not you. You have to get a separate form. So don't post your kids' faces a lot on social media because you can get in hot water, especially you don't know what the kids are going through. So try not to post your kids' information because also you signed a form at the beginning of the year because a lot of new teachers don't know that. They want to be TikTok stars and Instagram, stars on Instagram very early on. So be careful and also be
Mhm.
careful of taking pictures in the classroom because you can also get in trouble for that too. But going on the positive side, do post things about what you're doing in the classroom. So maybe instead of posting your students' faces, maybe you can post what they're doing in the classroom, maybe like the things they created instead of showing their faces, maybe show like what you posted on the walls or examples of what you've done. So those are some good things you can post on social media, like the fun things, the cool things you're doing in the classroom.
Marcel,
Right.
okay,
I'm
go ahead,
glad
Marcel.
you I'm glad you mentioned that because that's one of the things I think that I especially like to see on social media are the student
Mhm.
achievements, classroom activities, where things are going well and students are celebrating their success in the classroom. But I agree with you that you have to follow school policies regarding, any student photos or anything that you share because it might be one student that you're showcasing who has sort of like a privacy document that the school, you know, has, and you're unsure about that. So please make sure that you get those media releases, get those forms signed, or check them at your school to make sure that those students can be featured on social
Mhm.
media.
That's a good tip. Marcel, you gave us a P cubed. I'm going to give us a C cubed. So
Okay.
I think I use, and I think most people use social media to create, connect, or consume. So, and I think we need to
Hmm.
be really thinking deeply about how we do all of those things. So as educators, what are we creating? So what is it that we're putting out into the universe for others to consume? What ideas do we want to
Yes.
proliferate? And how can we I've used, and sometimes I'll use AI, like I'll type up something and say, can you make this more professional? Can you give me suggestions on how to improve this work? But I I use social media a lot. I have an idea and I want to share it, and I share it. That's how I
Hmm.
create. Sometimes it's through videos like this, like what we're doing tonight is creating. And sometimes it's
Hmm.
it's a written piece. Sometimes it's just like my daughter played basketball and had a good game. But the connect part is something that
Hmm.
teachers can do when you're worried about it being public. Like, can you create groups or pages where you can
Hmm.
invite other teachers or invite other people into a community to have conversations that are a little bit more protected? But again, screenshots, remember what Marcel said about that. But like, can we create groups where, like SC for Ed did, where there are these groups and
Hmm.
people can have conversations and feel like they're connected with other educators. So that's the connect. And then the consume part,
Hmm.
I just think one of the things we need to be careful of, um, not only for ourselves, but as we teach our students how to use social media, is, are we using social media or is social media using us?
Mhm.
Because in this, Tristan Harris talks a lot about the attention economy. Essentially, your attention is what helps these companies make money. And of course, they've got an
Hmm.
algorithm and that learns what you like and
Hmm.
what you're going to, react to. And I think the algorithm right now, in many cases, favors this sort of outrage culture that we're in, where like, oh my gosh, did you hear about that? And then immediately someone has has to take sides. And I'll just give you the Kendrick Lamar halftime performance. Like immediately, everybody had to have an opinion on that and to share that because it's controversial, like you said. And the question is what is this doing to the fabric of society, like in America? It's essentially it's rewarding division and outrage. And I have an opinion on it. I thought his performance was brilliant, but I hesitated in going out to propose that because I'm like, it's using me. It's using me. I didn't even think about it posting it until I got on social media and saw everybody else posting about it. And then I felt like, oh, well, I've got to contribute and let them know that I like the performance, that I'm good with it. But then I'm like, that's how you know it's using you. So I think it's really important for us as we explore this as educators and teach students how to use it responsibly to make sure that we're not just like having these automatic reactions to things and that's how we're using it. That we think through and really be genuine and authentic with how we use it.
I agree with you, Todd, because I'm sure it used me too because I got on social media. I was like, what are you all talking about? That was brilliant. There is a message here. You missed the
Right.
message. It wasn't about the music. So
Yeah, and I'm not judging anybody who did that. I'm not judging you. Because I was like this close to being like, oh my gosh, it was brilliant. I didn't understand the symbolism until I went back and read the articles, and I was like, oh my gosh, it was awesome, and I loved it. But I noticed myself doing that, like wanting to be part of that reaction.
And could you repeat that acronym you said again?
So we are either creating, connecting, or consuming. And we need to think about those roles. A lot of people just want to consume. They just go TikTok and scroll. They don't want to make anything for TikTok. But I think our students need to learn how to do all three of those things because it's an amazing tool. It's just that it's using us. It's like you see students just mindlessly scrolling, and adults too. We're just mindlessly consuming it, and we're not. And it's because that's how they make money. Is the longer that we're on there. So I'm learning to like try to set limits and disconnect. So that's the other thing I would just tell teachers, like really monitor how much you're using it and make some time for meditation and exercise and some other things that you need, reading a book.
And then when you're consuming, being careful you're not in your own echo chamber too, because I think that really affects educators and people in general. Because like with TikTok, so I know when the Grammys came out, a lot of people were upset about certain people only got certain Grammys, but a lot of people I saw a TikTok was saying, well, if you were in your echo chamber, that was the only song you were hearing. Other people never heard that song or heard of this artist, and so it really opened my eyes. Like sometimes when we're so stuck on social media, we're only stuck on one point of view, but you're not willing to listen to other things, and that can also affect us in the classroom too.
That's a good point.
Okay. All right. So we are talking about positive ways that educators can use social media. And so far, we've talked about, following inspiring accounts. We've also talked about, celebrating student achievements or classroom activities. Another is professional development. So many platforms, host some of the webinars. There are Twitter chats and other educator groups that you could take part in. But all of those are fantastic ways to kind of stay up to date and network with, your colleagues worldwide. So we're going to leave you with a few do's and don'ts. So as far as do's are concerned, and review your privacy settings regularly. Also said to follow your district and social media use. Use social media to build a professional learning network. We said to share positive and educational content, such as classroom achievements or creative ideas. Engage with professional educator communities using relevant hashtags like EdTech or Teacher Life. And we also said to obtain proper permissions before posting images or information about students and regularly reflect on how your posts align with your role as an educator. Okay, would you all agree with those do's? Okay, so as far as don'ts are concerned, this is what we caution you to do. So we caution you, don't connect with students on your personal accounts. Don't vent about work, colleagues, or students online. Call Cool Coaching. Uh, don't post controversial or polarizing opinions that could damage your professional reputation. Please don't share sensitive information about your school or students or use them in videos or posts without permissions. Don't overlook the potential reach of your posts. Remember, we always said that screenshots are forever. And don't ignore the updates to social media policies or platforms because sometimes they change and sometimes you don't know that they've changed. Okay, would you add anything to those do's and don'ts, Angelica or Todd? Anything I missed?
I think you pretty much got them all because those were the main things. Especially, do not post about your students personally.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would say, each social platform is different, and obviously,
Mhm.
if you've been following what's happened at Twitter and it's now X,
Yes.
the entire environment there has changed, and you need to be really careful because what I've noticed is even though I've blocked Elon Musk, I still get all of his tweets. So like
Mhm.
there is an algorithm there that is trying to create a certain type of change, and if you stay on there long enough, it's going to start affecting the way you see things. So just understand that it's not a passive thing. Like you really need to bring a critical mindset to
Mhm.
all of these things because there's a lot of conspiracy theories and misinformation that's spread throughout social media as well. And our students need to be aware of that because the 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 things that are like crazy, like people will say crazy things, and there's no gatekeeper to say whether it's true or not. And the
Right.
crazier it is, the more
Right.
attention it gets.
Right.
So we just need to be really careful. And I would just say, I would encourage all educators in all schools to really do. I know we're banning phones and stuff in schools, but
Mhm.
these kids need guidance on how to utilize social media. And if their parents aren't helping them through that and the schools aren't helping them through that, God help us all in the future because these kids really need responsible adults who are going to teach them critical thinking and how to use these responsibly. These apps, they're very powerful.
Definitely.
Yes. Okay, so our key takeaway basically is we know that, social media can be an incredible tool for teachers, but as educators, we definitely need to approach it with caution and professionalism. Any additional final thoughts, Angelica or Todd?
I love. I thought TikTok was banal for a long time, but I've grown to love it, and was really sad when I saw it go away there for a little while. Because the algorithm finally got me, and it was like, oh, this is the person who just doesn't want to see like this silly, goofy stuff all the time. That you actually wants to learn, and so it's actually a really great learning tool when you refine it and start following the people that you really respect and learn from. So I just encourage people to use it as an opportunity for great learning.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. Well, that's it for tonight's episode. Thanks for tuning in to the episode Cool Beans. Please know that we at Cool appreciate each of you for your many contributions to the teaching profession, but most importantly, your commitment to South Carolina's students and families. Please know you are making a difference every day, and we thank you. So if you enjoy this episode, please subscribe, share it with a colleague, and follow us on social media and at cool, CEWL.us for more tips and updates. Until next time, stay cool and keep inspiring.
Thanks. I'm going to shout out just a couple of things here real quick before we sign off. If you haven't already done so and you're interested in applying to the educator wellness retreats, there's two of them this summer, May 25th through the 27th and July 23rd through the 25th in Old Fort. Just go to the website, the Cool website, cool.us/retreat. If you haven't seen, we continue to celebrate Black History not only this month but every month, and one of the ways we do that is through Cool Books. And Cassie Owens Moore has a two-part series on books that highlight Black culture, and those are really great if you're looking for some books to share with your students or just for yourself. A couple of other things. On the 26th of March, we have a conversation with Derek Black, where he's going to be talking about censorship, race, and education through the lens of history. That's going to be at 7 o'clock. And this time next week, we'll have a legislative agenda, and I spelled legislative wrong. I see that. Sherry East, Tom Hudson, Kat Lowe, and Mary Rita, and some other guests will be on the call from 7 to 8 o'clock this time, Wednesday next week.
Well, thanks.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
And I did want to give a quick shout out to my grandmother. We did lose her last week, but she was one of our biggest supporters on Cool Beans. Every time we posted, she would be the main person sharing and, posting and always asking questions. So I did want to give a shout out to her. And she was the reason why I became an educator and why I am the teacher I am today. So I did want to give my grandmother a shout out for that.
Thank you, Angelica.
Yes, and our condolences to your family, Angelica. What a testimony and what a legacy she's left behind.
Definitely.
All right.
Thanks, everyone. Be cool. Until next